The difference between average and extraordinary isn't talent. It's effort. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone with less natural ability than you is outworking you, putting in the hours, the focus, and the determination that will eventually lead them to take the position you want. This isn't speculation. It's mathematics. Studies of top performers across every field show that the single greatest predictor of success isn't intelligence, connections, or luck. It's the willingness to consistently outwork everyone else. In my 40 years studying success patterns, I've never seen anyone reach the top of their field without this fundamental commitment to extraordinary effort. Most people operate at about 40 of their actual capacity. They do enough to avoid criticism, but not enough to stand out. They seek comfort rather than growth. And in doing so, they surrender their greatest opportunities to those willing to push harder, stay later, and commit more deeply to mastery. The harsh reality is that we live in a competitive world that rewards exceptional effort and ignores mediocrity. Your choice is simple. Outwork your competition or accept the leftovers they didn't want. Let me be completely clear about something most motivational speakers won't tell you. Natural talent is vastly overrated. We've been fed a steady diet of stories about naturally gifted individuals who effortlessly rise to the top of their fields. These stories aren't just misleading, they're dangerous because they provide a convenient excuse for not putting in the work. The truth is that what appears to be natural talent is almost always the result of thousands of hours of behind-the-scenes effort that nobody witnessed. Consider this research from Florida State University. When studying elite performers across domains, music, sports, chess, medicine, researchers found that the distinguishing factor wasn't innate ability. It was deliberate practice. The top performers had invested on average 10,000 hours more practice time than their naturally talented peers who plateaued at lower levels. What looked like talent to outside observers was actually the result of years of consistent, focused effort. Think about people commonly labeled as prodigies: Mozart, Tiger Woods, or Serena Williams. When we examine their stories closely, we find that their extraordinary achievements weren't products of superior genetic gifts, but of extraordinarily early starts and uncommon work ethics. Mozart wasn't writing symphonies at 5 years old as popular myth suggests. He was practicing piano for hours daily under his father's strict guidance. By age 20, he had already invested more practice hours than most musicians accumulate in a lifetime. The so-called overnight success is perhaps the most persistent and harmful myth in our culture. Look behind any overnight success and you'll find years or decades of preparation, failed attempts, learning, and persistence. The actor who comes out of nowhere to win an Academy Award typically spent 15 years working in obscurity, taking acting classes, doing community theater, and playing tiny roles before their big break. The entrepreneur whose company seems to suddenly explode into the public consciousness. Usually we weathered years of rejection, setbacks, and near bankruptcy before finding the right formula. This isn't just inspiring, it's liberating. If success were primarily determined by natural talent, most of us would be permanently limited by our genetic lottery ticket. But since success is primarily determined by work ethic, your potential is largely within your control. You may not be able to control your initial talents, but you absolutely can control how hard you work. The mathematics of extraordinary effort are both simple and profound. Small advantages in daily effort compound over time into enormous differences in results. This is what I call the slight edge principle, and it's one of the most powerful forces in achievement. Consider two people starting in the same position with similar talents. One works the standard expected hours and puts in average effort. The other works just 1 hour longer each day and pushes just 10 harder during their working hours. This seemingly small difference, just 1 extra hour daily, creates a performance gap of over 250 hours annually. Over 5 years, that's 1,250 extra hours of improvement, practice, learning, and output. How could anyone receiving this much less practice possibly keep up? The compound effect becomes even more dramatic when you consider quality of effort. The person who consistently pushes to their limits experiences breakthrough improvements that someone working at 80 capacity never encounters. Top performers don't just work longer. They work with greater intensity, focus, and purpose. Their extra effort doesn't just add to their advantage, it multiplies it. Now, think about sales professionals. The average salesperson makes a certain number of calls, sends a certain number of emails, and gives a certain number of presentations. The top performer makes just 2 or 3 more calls daily, follows up more consistently, and prepares more thoroughly for each presentation. Over a month, this slight edge in activity produces substantially more opportunities. Over a year, the difference in results isn't 10, it's often 200 or 303. In competitive environments, these small edges are everything. The Olympic gold medalist doesn't beat the silver medalist by 20t. Often the difference is less than 1. But that tiny performance edge created through thousands of extra training hours and countless moments of pushing beyond comfortable limits makes all the difference between being the champion and being forgotten. To truly benefit from outworking others, you must first clearly identify your competition. Many people make the critical mistake of comparing themselves to average performers in their field. This creates a dangerous complacency. If everyone around you is working at 50 capacity and you're working at 60, you might feel superior, but you're still operating far below your potential. Your real competition isn't the people immediately around you. It's the absolute best in your field. Those rare individuals who have committed to mastery, these are the standards you must measure yourself against. If you're in sales, don't compare yourself to the average performer in your office. Compare yourself to the top producers in your entire industry. If you're building a business, don't benchmark against local competitors. Study the world-class operations that dominate your market. This higher standard is initially uncomfortable because it forces you to confront how far you have to go. But this discomfort is precisely what drives extraordinary effort. When you realize the gap between your current performance and true excellence, complacency becomes impossible. You're forced to elevate your work ethic to a completely different level. There's another dimension to competition that's often overlooked. You're not just competing against others, you're competing against your previous best self. This internal competition is perhaps the most powerful motivator for sustained effort. Each day, ask yourself, am I working harder today than I did yesterday? Am I pushing my limits further? Am I learning and improving more rapidly? The truly elite performers I've studied maintain detailed records of their effort and results specifically to compete against their previous benchmarks. They're constantly asking, how can I improve on my best previous performance? This creates a continuous upward spiral of effort and achievement that eventually separates them from everyone in their field. The greatest obstacle to extraordinary effort isn't physical, it's psychological. Your mind will create countless justifications for comfort, rationalize average effort, and invent false limits on what you can accomplish. Understanding and overcoming these mental barriers is essential to sustaining the work ethic that drives exceptional results. Your brain is biologically programmed to conserve energy and avoid discomfort, a survival mechanism from our evolutionary past that's now the enemy of exceptional achievement. When you push beyond comfortable limits, your mind generates powerful resistance in the form of fatigue, doubt, and distraction. These signals aren't accurate reflections of your actual capacity. They're simply your brain's attempt to maintain homeostasis and return to familiar effort levels. Elite performers understand this psychological mechanism and develop methods to push past it. They know that the initial wave of mental resistance typically subsides after about 20 minutes of sustained effort. They've trained themselves to ignore the early signals to slow down or stop, recognizing them as false limitations rather than genuine boundaries. This ability to override your brain's comfort signals is trainable. Start by identifying your typical quitting points, those moments when you usually slow down, take a break, or call it a day. Then make a conscious decision to push just 15 minutes beyond that. Each time you do this, you're retraining your brain to recognize that the discomfort of effort is not a signal to stop, but simply a checkpoint to push through. Another powerful psychological technique is to build your identity around being the hardest worker in the room. Most people allow their feelings to determine their actions. They work hard when they feel motivated and slack off when they don't. Top performers reverse this pattern. They let their actions determine their feelings by committing to consistent effort regardless of mood or motivation. Over time, this creates an identity shift where extraordinary effort becomes not just what they do, but who they are. Another powerful psychological technique is to build your identity around being the hardest worker in the room. Most people allow their feelings to determine their actions. They work hard when they feel motivated and slack off when they don't. Top performers reverse this pattern. They let their actions determine their feelings by committing to consistent effort, regardless of mood or motivation. Over time, this creates an identity shift where extraordinary effort becomes not just what they do, but who they are. To maintain this exceptional work ethic consistently, you need a system rather than relying on willpower alone. Willpower fluctuates daily based on sleep, stress, and countless other factors. A work ethic system provides structure and accountability that carries you through inevitable motivation dips. Start by establishing clear, measurable productivity metrics for your field. If you're in sales, track not just results, but the activities that generate those results. Calls made, emails sent, meetings booked. If you're developing a skill, measure practice hours, repetitions completed, or problems solved. Without clear metrics, you can fool yourself about how hard you're actually working. Create daily rituals that protect your most productive hours. The most effective performers I've coached block their peak energy periods for their most important work and fiercely defend this time against interruptions. They turn off notifications, decline meetings, and create physical spaces that signal to others they're in deep work mode. This environmental design makes extraordinary effort the path of least resistance. Time leverage is another crucial system element. Top performers constantly ask, how can I produce 10x the results in the same time? They delegate low-value tasks, eliminate unnecessary activities, and utilize technology to multiply their output. This isn't about working longer hours, but maximizing the impact of every hour worked. Often, strategic elimination of non-essential work creates more value than additional effort on low-leverage activities. Track your effort systematically. Keep a work journal documenting hours invested, challenges overcome, and milestones achieved. This record serves multiple purposes. It keeps you accountable, prevents self-deception about your actual effort level, and provides motivational fuel when you review how far you've come. The most successful individuals I've studied can tell you precisely how many hours they've invested in mastering their craft. Energy management is the often overlooked component of sustained hard work. You cannot maintain peak performance without strategic recovery periods. Elite athletes understand this principle better than most business professionals. They push to their absolute limits during training sessions, then prioritize proper nutrition, sleep, and recovery to rebuild stronger. This cycle of stress and recovery creates continuing capacity for extraordinary effort. Let's be brutally honest about something. Outworking everyone requires significant sacrifices. There's no way around this fundamental truth. When you commit to extraordinary effort, you're simultaneously committing to giving up certain comforts and conveniences others enjoy. You'll sacrifice leisure time that others spend relaxing. While they're watching TV shows, scrolling social media, or socializing casually, you'll often be putting in extra hours mastering your craft. This doesn't mean eliminating all pleasure from your life. That leads to burnout and diminishing returns. But it does mean being extraordinarily selective about your leisure, ensuring it genuinely recharges you for renewed effort rather than merely passing time. You'll sacrifice immediate gratification for long-term rewards. The human brain is wired to prefer immediate, certain rewards over delayed, uncertain ones. When you choose to put in additional work hours today for benefits that may not materialize for months or years, you're fighting against powerful psychological forces. This delayed gratification capacity is perhaps the single greatest predictor of long-term success. You'll sacrifice certain relationships. Not all people in your life will understand or support your extraordinary commitment to your work. Some may feel threatened by your ambition or resent the time you invest in your craft rather than with them. While maintaining key relationships is essential for both personal fulfillment and professional success, you must be willing to let go of connections that consistently pull you toward mediocrity or away from your commitments. These sacrifices create temporary pain, no question about it. But here's the liberating truth. The pain of discipline weighs ounces, while the pain of regret weighs tons. The temporary discomfort of pushing beyond normal limits pales in comparison to the lasting anguish of knowing you settled for less than your potential. The key to making these sacrifices sustainable is finding deeper meaning in your work. When your effort connects to your core values and serves a purpose beyond yourself, extraordinary work shifts from sacrifice to privilege. The most successful people I've studied don't see themselves as sacrificing for success. They see themselves as fortunate to have discovered work worth committing to completely. There's a crucial distinction between smart hard work and merely grinding. Many people confuse activity with achievement, staying busy without producing meaningful results. True productivity isn't about perspiration alone. It's about applying extraordinary effort to the right activities in the right way. Start by ensuring your extra effort focuses on high leverage activities, those tasks that directly drive your most important outcomes. In sales, for instance, time spent improving your closing presentation or practicing objection handling typically generates far more return than time spent reorganizing your customer database. In skill development, deliberate practice on your weakest areas typically yields more improvement than additional repetitions of what you already do well. Apply the Pareto principle religiously. 80 of your results typically come from 20 of your activities. Identify that critical 20 and concentrate your extraordinary effort there. This often means saying no to good opportunities to focus on great ones. Average performers spread themselves too thin across too many activities. Exceptional performers concentrate their effort where it creates disproportionate results. Monitor for signs you're working hard on the wrong things. Excessive busyness without measurable progress, chronic exhaustion without breakthrough results, or the sense you're running ever faster just to stay in place. These indicators suggest you need to reallocate your effort rather than simply increase it. Avoid the trap of competitive exhaustion, working to the point of diminishing returns simply to demonstrate commitment. Your goal isn't to be the most tired person in the room, but the most effective. Strategic recovery isn't laziness. It's a requirement for sustained high performance. The most successful people I've coached build deliberate recovery periods into their schedules, not as rewards for hard work, but as essential components of their performance. The outworking mindset manifests differently across domains, but its fundamental principles remain consistent. Let's examine how extraordinary effort translates into results across various fields. In business and entrepreneurship, outworking the competition often means taking on challenges others avoid. While competitors stick to comfortable, established approaches, top entrepreneurs willingly tackle the difficult, complex problems others ignore. They see obstacles as opportunities to create value where others can't or won't. This perspective transforms hard work from burden to competitive advantage. The most successful entrepreneurs I've worked with maintain what I call an ownership mentality. They take complete responsibility for outcomes rather than making excuses based on circumstances. This accountability drives them to find solutions where others see only problems. They understand that in business, the hardest workers aren't necessarily those who stay latest at the office, but those who take on the toughest challenges with the greatest determination. In professional careers, extraordinary effort often manifests as continuous skill development beyond job requirements. While average performers do what's expected and wait for promotion opportunities, top professionals constantly expand their capabilities, take on additional responsibilities, and solve problems before they're asked. They don't just work within their job descriptions, they consistently expand them through initiative and results. One of my clients increased his income by 300 in 5 years through a simple strategy. Identify the highest value problems in his organization and develop the skills to solve them before anyone asked. While colleagues complained about challenges, he equipped himself to address them. By solving problems others couldn't or wouldn't tackle, he made himself indispensable and commanded compensation to match. In physical domains like sports and fitness, the principle of outworking your competition is perhaps most visible. Every Olympic athlete trains when they don't feel like it. Every championship team practices the fundamentals long after their competitors have gone home. What separates world-class performers from the merely good isn't usually natural physical gifts, but the willingness to push beyond comfortable limits consistently. Consider this reality. In professional sports, nearly every athlete has exceptional natural talent. The differentiator at the highest levels isn't genetic potential, but work ethic. Those who maintain their intensity through every practice, who complete one more repetition when others quit, who study film while competitors rest. These are the athletes who ultimately excel when talents are otherwise equal. In skill acquisition and learning, extraordinary effort creates compounding advantages over time. The individual who studies a subject for 3 hours daily rather than one doesn't just learn 3 times as much. They reach breakthrough insights and connections others never experience. This depth of understanding creates exponential. Rather than linear advantages, one universal principle across all these domains: consistency trumps intensity. The person who works at 80 capacity every single day will always outperform the person who works at 100 sporadically. Your daily habits, not your occasional bursts of effort, ultimately determine your results. When you begin consistently outworking everyone around you, people will notice, and their reactions will test your commitment. Understanding this phase of the journey prepares you to maintain your extraordinary effort even when external responses become challenging. The timeline of recognition follows a predictable pattern. For the first few weeks or months of exceptional effort, you'll likely receive encouragement and support. People generally respond positively to initial self-improvement efforts. This early validation feels good but can be dangerously misleading if it becomes your primary motivation. After several months of sustained extraordinary effort, you'll enter what I call the desert phase, period where you continue putting in exceptional work without obvious external recognition. This phase tests your intrinsic motivation and commitment to your standards rather than others' approval. Many quit during this critical period just before their consistent effort would have created breakthrough results. If you persist through the desert phase, you'll eventually reach a tipping point where your results become undeniable. This recognition phase brings different challenges. Some colleagues may feel threatened by your success and respond with criticism or attempts to undermine your confidence. Others may try to take credit for your achievements or suggest you've been lucky rather than acknowledging your extraordinary effort. How you handle this recognition period determines whether your success becomes sustainable. External validation feels wonderful after long periods of unrecognized work, but it's a dangerous foundation for continued effort. The moment you begin working for others' approval, rather than your own standards, you surrender control of your motivation to forces outside yourself. The healthiest approach is using external validation as confirmation you're on the right track while maintaining internal standards that exceed what others expect. Let recognition be a pleasant side effect of your work ethic rather than its primary purpose. The greatest performers maintain the same extraordinary effort whether anyone is watching or not. The legacy of outworking everyone extends far beyond the immediate results you achieve. When you commit to extraordinary effort over years and decades, you create ripple effects that transform not just your circumstances, but your character and influence. The most obvious long-term benefit is expertise development. While talent gives you a head start, sustained effort eventually produces mastery that surpasses natural ability. After 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, your skills become so internalized they appear effortless to observers, creating the illusion of natural talent for the next generation of aspirants. Less obvious, but equally important, is the character transformation that occurs through consistent hard work. Pushing beyond comfortable limits develops discipline, resilience, problem-solving abilities, and emotional regulation. These traits transfer across all life domains, enhancing your relationships, health, and overall effectiveness. The work ethic becomes not just something you do, but a fundamental part of who you are. Perhaps most significant is the cultural impact you create in your environment. Hard work is contagious. When others see your commitment and results, some will be inspired to elevate their own standards. I've watched single individuals transform entire organizations by demonstrating what's possible through extraordinary effort. Your example creates permission for others to push beyond artificial limitations they've accepted. This leadership through example is particularly powerful for those in your direct sphere of influence, your children, employees, teammates, or students. When they observe your daily commitment to excellence, you establish a standard that becomes their normal expectation. Many of the most successful people I've studied cite a parent, mentor, or early boss who modeled exceptional work ethic as their most formative influence. Your legacy of hard work outlasts your direct contributions. Long after specific achievements are forgotten, the standard you established and the lives you influenced through your example continue creating value. This may be the most compelling reason to outwork everyone. Not just what it helps you achieve, but who it helps you become and how that transformation affects others. As we conclude, let me emphasize the fundamental truth that has emerged from decades studying success patterns. Your willingness to outwork your competition is the single most controllable factor in determining your ultimate success. You cannot control your natural talents, your starting circumstances, or how others respond to your efforts, but you absolutely can control how hard you work. This control is both a responsibility and an opportunity. When you fully embrace your capacity for extraordinary effort, you unlock potential that most people never discover within themselves. You transform what seemed like fixed limitations into temporary obstacles. You rewrite what's possible in your field through persistent, focused work. I challenge you to make 3 specific commitments today. First, identify the top performers in your field and begin benchmarking your effort against theirs rather than against average contributors. Second, establish clear metrics to track your productive output objectively, eliminating self-deception about your actual work level. Third, create a daily system that protects your most valuable work time against interruptions and distractions. These three commitments alone will place you in the top 10 of performers in virtually any field if maintained consistently. The barriers to extraordinary achievement aren't typically talent or opportunity, but simply the willingness to sustain uncomfortable effort long enough for compounding advantages to accumulate. Remember always that work ethic is a choice available to everyone, regardless of circumstances. When you choose to outwork everyone around you, you take control of your destiny in the most fundamental way possible. You declare through your actions that your future will be determined not by chance or circumstance, but by your willingness to pay the price for exceptional achievement. The path of extraordinary effort isn't easy. If it were, everyone would take it. But the rewards, the deep satisfaction of maximizing your potential, the pride in overcoming significant challenges, and the opportunity to create lasting impact through your work, make the journey worthwhile beyond measure. The decision is yours right now. Will you continue at your current effort level, accepting whatever results that produces, or will you commit today to the extraordinary work ethic that separates the truly successful from those who merely wish for better outcomes? Your answer to this question, demonstrated not through words but through daily actions, will determine the course of your future more powerfully than any other single factor. The secret that most people miss about extraordinary effort is its compounding nature. Like compound interest in finance, compound effort in your career creates exponential rather than linear returns. The gap between someone who works at average intensity and someone who consistently outworks everyone doesn't just grow over time. It multiplies. Think about two professionals starting at the same level with similar talents. The first puts in standard effort, 40 hours weekly, moderate focus, occasional extra projects. The second commits to outworking everyone. 50 hours weekly, intense focus during peak performance periods, consistent skill development, and strategic relationship building. After 1 year, the second person might be 20 ahead in results. After 5 years, the gap could easily be 500 more. This happens because extraordinary effort creates 4 compounding advantages simultaneously. First, you develop skills more rapidly through additional practice hours. Second, you build stronger professional relationships through consistent value delivery. Third, you encounter more opportunities because you're processing more experiences and interactions. Fourth, you develop a reputation that attracts even greater opportunities without additional effort. What makes this principle so powerful is that you don't need to be born with exceptional gifts to benefit from it. You simply need to make the daily decision to put in the work others won't. This decision is available to everyone, regardless of background, education, or natural talents. I've personally witnessed this transformation hundreds of times. People with modest natural abilities who committed to outworking everyone eventually surpassed naturally gifted individuals who relied on talent alone. Their success wasn't mysterious or magical. It was mathematical. More focused hours, maintained consistently, produced dramatically better results over time. The most important decision you'll make isn't what field to enter or what specific skills to develop. It's whether you'll commit to the extraordinary effort required for exceptional results or settle for the modest outcomes that average effort produces. This decision, more than any other single factor, determines your ultimate success level in any endeavor. Make that decision today, right now, not through bold declarations or temporary motivation, but through immediate action that establishes momentum. Identify the one high leverage activity in your field where additional effort will produce maximum results. Then double your current investment in that activity for the next 30 days. This simple commitment, if maintained, will place you on an entirely different trajectory than your peers. Remember, in the end, we all get what we truly work for. Make sure your effort matches your ambition. The world rewards those willing to put in the work. Starting today, be that person. Outwork everyone.